the dot-com era, which went down 95%. So if that worst case occurs, you're talking about a $3,500 handle on Bitcoin. I'm still in that same camp. I mean, in the very minimum, I think 25.5. I still have about an 80% probability that we'll get to that level. We've just been meandering in this beautiful kind of consolidation phase, right? So it is a bearish channel. I mean, let's be clear on that, but that doesn't mean we can't go up a little bit. And if you look now, the high end of the channel is crossing right at that pink trend line, which is actually that 25.5 pivot low from the Terra Luna collapse. So it makes a lot of sense to me that we should see one more push up right into that level. And then the question is, can it break that? And that's going to be the tougher scenario for Bitcoin to get through that 25.5. And then if we, again, and I think we'll look at Ethereum in a little bit, but Ethereum, like you said, is bouncing around this level of resistance. But I do think there's a chance that you could get up to that next one right around 2,000 if Bitcoin can make that next move up. So I think for the most part, I'm still neutral to positive. I think that you have a Fed that's on hold. You're likely going to see a reduction in or inflation numbers are going to come down. We've seen commodities really come down substantially over the last couple months. You have to think that's going to filter through to the CPI data this week. And I think that gives the market that ability to have a little bit more risk on before we see maybe some downside in the next few months. I think it would create a big sell-off. I think you get a risk-off trade in both the equity markets as well as the crypto markets. And again, the idea is we already got a stronger than expected jobs number. If you couple that with higher inflation again, the markets are going to say, oh my goodness, the Fed has to do 75 basis points in September. And who knows if they can even stop going into the midterm elections at that rate. Right. So I would be very surprised if that happened. But if it did happen, you're looking at a big sell-off, especially because the equity markets and even Bitcoin have rallied over the last couple months, especially since the last Fed meeting when the Fed was much more dovish, right? Right. So that alone kind of is building in the fact the markets have been building in this idea that those CPI numbers are coming down. If that doesn't happen, watch out below. The idea is maybe the Fed can generate a soft landing, and that's giving these asset prices. We're seeing the stock market having quite a monster rally off of its recent lows. Bitcoin hasn't had a monster move, but if you look at Ethereum's had a huge move off of the lows as well. So, I mean, the idea is the soft landing keeps us from going into recession. It keeps the Fed from really tightening too much more. But if you get this scenario, and this is what I think is going to happen, is I think you're going to see an economy that slips into a recession, then a worse recession, and the Fed, again, the inability initially to save the markets is by printing money like they have in past recessions is going to be very, very problematic, and it's likely going to trigger a domino effect into a worse recession. Now, at some point during this worst recession, probably in 2023, you're going to see the Fed say, oh my goodness, unemployment is now at 10%. With a recession, you usually see a reduction in inflation. Maybe inflation's come back to 4%. And they're going to say 10% unemployment, we have to start printing again, or at least lowering interest rates to stimulate growth and get some of these people off of unemployment. And that's going to be, to me, that is where you see the pivot in Bitcoin from a risk on or risk on asset to actually becoming more like that gold and starting to take off in those printing money periods.
If you're looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum, which one do you like right now leading into what we're dealing with, at least in the short term? And which one do you like long term?
Good question. So short term, I'm going to play the conservative side, and I think Bitcoin is the play here. Ethereum's already over 100% off of its lows, and I think, again, Ethereum has that higher beta where in market bounces, it's going to do more, but then in market bear markets, it's going to lose a lot more as well. And because I still think we have that leg down, I think if you had to choose one, you want Bitcoin because, again, it has the stability, it has relative stability to Ethereum. Now, longer term, that's the better question, right? I think that, again, you'd probably want some exposure in both. So you cover both bases. You have the use case of Ethereum and the Ethereum network, and then kind of the digital gold where a lot of institutional money will flow into the Bitcoin investments. So I think in longer term, I like both of them. I think I would generally say to people to be careful with other cryptocurrencies because, we see, if you look back 2 years ago, a lot of the ones that were in the top 20 are no longer in the top 20. Of market cap. So there are ones that are replacing, like Solana wasn't around that long ago. Avalanche wasn't around that long ago. And so there's still a jockeying for what the third and the fourth and the fifth will be, as if you're looking at the blue chips. So I think if you're looking out long term, you don't know yet, but I would stick with Ethereum and Bitcoin as your investments for the longer term right now. Is again, you got down, even down here, it was as low as about just below 900. So you have to look at it. And one of the things as a trader, I make sure to mark myself, it's not what your entry is, it's what the low was. So, your entry might have been 1400, but if it went to 900 or 885, it's now up 100% off of those lows. And you have to say, that's a big run in a very short amount of time. Said that, I love the fact that the chart is banging on this resistance. You can see the resistance very easily over here. I love that we hit it here, we consolidated, we hit it here again, and then it looks like we're trying to break out. So taking a little off is a good idea. To me, it still looks like there's a little bit more upside in Ethereum, likely coinciding if we can get to 25.5 or greater on Bitcoin. One of the levels to watch would be 1900. You can see this kind of area right here. And then really, I would even say the even number of 2000 would be your next level. So, let's just say you have a full position on Ethereum. I think you look to take maybe 20% off here, 20% off above 1900, 20% off above 2000, and just kind of cycle out that way, and then maybe just hold your remaining 20 or 40% and just say, I'm going to roll with it just in case we start a new bull market, and then you participate. But we certainly, in all fairness, I'm believing that we're going to start coming into some big resistance and eventually roll over. The last thing I would just note is this would be kind of the most bullish case scenario where I would actually short Ethereum. If Ethereum got a monster move up into this trend line, I would probably pull the trigger on a short in the next couple of weeks. You have two ways of looking at it. One is the pure technicals, which is the 10 to 12,000 range that we've been talking about. And then you have the what if this is an absolute wipeout where you do see these exchanges go belly up and you do see 90% of cryptos go to zero, in which case you have to refer back to the Amazon chart at .com, the .com era, which went down 95%. So if that worst case occurs, you're talking about a $3,500 handle on Bitcoin. Now, again, at that point, everyone's like, oh, I'd buy as much as I can. But remember, you'll probably be so scared at that point that you're going to be like, I don't know if I want to. So just be aware of the emotional. And I think the important thing to remember is that, first of all, fear is usually what you want to buy. Now, it's hard to remind yourself of that when you're fearful. But remember, doing a small amount, there's nothing wrong with that. At that price, you buy $10,000 worth. And that's think about what you could get with 10,000 today in terms of Bitcoin, not even half a Bitcoin, but you could get over 3 Bitcoin or about 3 Bitcoin at that point. So you can always do it small. And then if it is a long-term bottom and we go to 100,000, you're making a ton of money anyways, but you always want to do like a level where if it is a debacle, you don't get hurt too much.